Big day. Our viewers have never been this excited about any Conservative leader. They've certainly never been this excited about any Labour leader. But they're absolutely over the moon. Your column today, I think, says it all. Whisper it. Trump may do a good job. I think he will.
Well, frankly, we just don't know at the moment. But what one way or the other, all the signs are there that this is a sort of slightly different Donald Trump than the previous incarnation. He's not as insecure, I don't think, as he was in his first term, when there was always questions over whether he had legitimately won the presidency. He had to bat those away for the majority of his first term, whereas actually his win in November was pretty comprehensive. It's the protests are pretty muted, but what we are left with is this sort of hysteria. I'm not talking about your show or your listeners, or indeed talk, but you don't have to go very far elsewhere into the British media to see the same mistakes being made again. You've got this sort of notion that people have just decided, because they don't like him, it's going to be a disaster. Right. There's no upsides. Yes, he's brash. Yes, he's rude. No, he doesn't play by the rules. And when will you ever see a president dancing with the village people as he was last night? But this instant assumption that the history books have already been decided that, he's going to sell out Ukraine, he's going to make the Middle East more dangerous, he's going to take us into war with China, he's going to drive the US economy off a cliff, he's all this stuff that that the evidence doesn't bear out that it's actually going to happen.
Right.
And I think, look, it's in Britain's interest for our closest ally to succeed. And yet, the sort of sneering and whining and people like Ed Davey jumping on the bandwagon, already putting out statements saying how dire everything is.
And how dangerous he's going to be and all this, right?
Dangerous day for the world and all this gibberish. And I just think, I'm probably more wishful thinking, but I've just sort of thought, sitting there yesterday, I was writing that, I was like, can everyone just calm down? And let's just see what happens. Let's see how it goes.
Well, exactly right. I mean, yesterday I watched Laura Kuenssberg with sort of further disbelief than normal, because she was actually being quite sensible up until yesterday for a while. But she had this terrible habit of every time she said Hamas, she kept saying a prescribed organisation in many countries, some including Britain. But then she got stuck into Donald Trump. Have a look at her talking here to Greg Swenson from Republicans Overseas.
Not all of your fellow Americans feel that optimism, though. For some people, he's a divisive character. He's a danger to democracy in some people's view. Even some people who worked for him first time round have said he's like a fascist. Is he going to try to reach out, do you think, in the next couple of days, or does he not care about offending others?
And that's kind of what she had to say to Greg Swenson, almost as though, it's very important to focus on a small group of people demonstrating outside the White House, despite the fact that, millions of people actually voted for the guy.
Yeah, millions of people voted for the guy. I would say the sort of protests this time round are significantly more muted. I think even on the more sensible parts of the political left, there is an acceptance that, look, this guy did win, and he absolutely won fair and square. The other thing to note about Donald Trump sort of 2.0 is this is the last time he can't stand for election again. He's got basically 18 months, 2 years to go hell for leather in doing everything without having to worry about being re-elected, without having to worry about that next election on the horizon. And because of that, also, it means that you sort of become a bit of a lame duck towards the end of your last term when you're not going to be re-elected, and the focus will move on to who's the successor, who's the chosen one, who will kind of keep the MAGA torch alive. So actually, I think what we're going to see is a sort of definitely a front-loaded presidency from Donald Trump. He will do a lot of things very quickly. Fox were reporting this morning that he's going to sign up more than 200 executive president orders today. Yeah. And he was saying, some people were telling him to just go a bit slower and trickle it out over a few months. But he's saying, no, we're going to do all these things. And things that, are slightly relevant to politics in this country. What he's going to be doing, he's going to be massively, sort of green-lighting further drilling for oil, which is obviously a toxic subject in the United Kingdom. We're sitting on massive oil reserves in the North Sea, which we're just no longer going to use for political reasons. He's rolling back electric vehicle mandates. These are the rules that are going to come in the UK as well, that will will basically force us to buy electric cars by the middle of the next decade, even though the infrastructure and the car companies are all saying that's mad, we can't do that, we need to go slower. He's going to be withdrawing the United States once again from the Paris Climate Accords. This is the sort of net zero guiding sort of lights that we've all signed up for. But actually, the American economy was already going pretty well, far better than the British and European economies, and it looks like he's going to be doing some stuff that's going to seriously stimulate the US economy by rolling back that green agenda, which is obviously a topic of discussion we have in this country, but no one has really any confidence that under this government we're not going to be doing anything going further and faster and more painfully towards net zero.
No, for sure. And he's also going to get rid of all the sort of DEI stuff as well. Let's have a look at what he had to say about this last night.
God spared my... Oh, you're going to have a lot of fun watching television tomorrow. Somebody said yesterday, sir, don't sign so many in one day. Let's do it over a period of weeks. I said, like hell, we're going to do it over weeks. We're going to sign them at the beginning.
I mean, he's already just galvanising, isn't he? After 4 years of Biden, who would, put a glass eye to sleep, and all the gaffes and mistakes that he made, and all of the... it's interesting that the left, who take great care to criticise Trump and talk about him being dangerous, they've got nothing to say about a president who was basically being propped up by what looks like a load of lies coming from the Democrats inside the White House, even from his own family, telling us all that he was fine, when he clearly wasn't fine.
I've written about this at length, and I remember it was the British press, we were the sort of first ones to go, hang on, being at the G7 summit last year and reporting that, Biden was clearly gaga and the White House going berserk about it. And they lied. They lied and lied and lied. And they carried on lying until they couldn't lie anymore. And that should go down in history as one of the biggest presidential cover-ups since Watergate. But it won't, because they're nice and fluffy, and the Democrats, and it's fine when they do it because they're not evil right-wingers. And anyway, I could rant about that all day long, but you're right about the DEI stuff as well. Look, he isn't even in the White House yet, and already sort of corporate America has seen the way the world is going. Maybe one day we'll be able to buy a pair of trainers or a car or a burger without being sort of virtue signaled by brands. But people like Walmart and Ford have already sort of announced they're scrapping their DEI programs. McDonald's, you can't get more American than McDonald's, sort of rowing back on all of these policies they put in to try and sort of score points with the left. And actually, look at Facebook. You can't get more totemic. The website, Nick Clegg mysteriously disappearing from Facebook, and then a day or two later, Mark Zuckerberg, announcing they're going to reform all of their censorship programs that basically, essentially kept targeted the right and right-wing news, and Donald Trump himself was banned from Facebook at one point. A complete turnaround. You can't get any bigger than that. But it wasn't just companies that sort of signed up to this sort of global woke movement trying to be right on. It was actually government departments both here and in the United States. The FBI have already said they're ditching their DEI programs, and I think they were ahead of the curve, because the president's going to sign this afternoon, I suspect, a ban on all of that sort of woke number jumbo being in the workplace. Because people have been saying, look, why does the FBI, why does the Secret Service need a DEI program when their job is to protect and serve? And I think that will have a knock-on effect around the world. It's all, some of the biggest companies in the world are already sort of shifting away from that. It might take some time, but it will ease back. It will sort of ease back the march towards this stuff in this country as well, I suspect.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
The other thing that made me laugh this morning was they were talking about how they're going to basically essentially rid... One of the biggest mistakes they made in 2016 was not having enough political appointees and relying on sort of Obama people to stay in some key political positions. It's a little bit different in America. They actually, the top sort of 3,000 jobs of the civil service are sort of appointed by the new administration each time. But so they will be doing that properly. And one of the Trump team briefing one of the papers said the easiest and quickest way we're going to get our people in and their people out is make them come back and work from the office 5 days a week, and They won't like that, so they'll probably go on their own bat anyway.
They absolutely won't. And just finally, where does this all leave Keir Starmer? Because he's got another bad week looming. He's got, Angela Rayner being looked into for a possible ethics breach. Sadiq Khan, I know he doesn't technically work for him. He's also getting questions about his tickets. The Attorney General still under fire. There's now Robert Jenrick has asked for an inquiry into him. Meanwhile, he's got Rachel Reeves over in Davos. He's sitting here in London, not in Washington, D.C. Presumably he's just going to watch the inauguration on the telly, is he?
Well, traditionally, Prime Ministers don't go. He's obviously sending Karen Pierce, our ambassador, to represent the British government. But it is a bit embarrassing that you're going to have Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, scores of...
Giorgia Maloney,
other leaders haven't been invited. So there is a precedent has been broken. Look, I suspect we'll see him in Washington pretty soon. It's normally sort of tradition that the Brits, go out there, and I don't know whether he'll be first but he'll be out there pretty fast, I suspect. Look, I'm told they insist that the relationship between Trump and Starmer and themselves is good, it's warm. They've had a good chat, but it's clear the teams are a little bit suspicious of each other, and it hasn't been going that well. And there's a big choice to make for Starmer in the coming months and years. He's very clear that he wants a US trade deal. He wants to reopen talks that were paused by Joe Biden, that Trump and Boris had started, to get that free trade deal, which would be, the sort of jewel in the sort of Brexit crown, I suspect. But at the same time, he's renegotiating his position with Brexit. That's all going to come to a head with the European Union in the coming months. And look, they're not going to suddenly soften their stance towards Brexit and offer some better deal simply because they're Labour rather than being those once again those ghastly Tories. The sort of expectation that it will be fine because they all they're a bit more similar, so therefore they'll get a better deal. It's nonsense. At some point, the EU is going to demand a price for softening checks. That price is going to be closer alignment on EU rules and red tape and on new laws and how that will be overseen by the courts, and that is going to rub Donald Trump up the wrong way. So Keir Starmer says he doesn't have to choose between the US and a closer ties with the European Union. I think he does, and that choice is going to have to come soon. And that's where, for all the nice words and handshakes and patting each other on the back, that's where the real politics comes into it. Who are we going to lash ourselves to? Donald Trump's America going gangbusters on the economy, or a sickly European Union, sort of struggling to contain the popular will that doesn't like it very much.
No, quite. Very interesting stuff. Harry, it's going to be a very interesting day. Read your column in The Sun today, page 10, every single Monday. Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. The headline says, whisper it, Trump may do a good job. You can always regard and you can reply to Harry Cole, of course, on his column in The Sun.